I'm back today with another Artist Spotlight video. Today we take a look at the artist known as Diesel, David S. LaForce, another one of the great Core 4 artists from that early era of Dungeons & Dragons. Please stick around. I'm AZ Mountaineer, and this is our channel, Old School Rules, where we celebrate the community of old school gamers and grognards who like classic RPGs, miniatures, magazines, and everything that goes with it. On the Artist Spotlight series, we take some time to look at the art of a particular artist who was well known in the early days of Dungeons & Dragons. This week, that's David S. LaForce, one of those core artists responsible for the explosion of Dungeons & Dragons products from the late 70s to early 80s. Hope you enjoyed today's video. I'm really pleased to be talking today about the art of an artist who's often known just by his initials, DSL, which is where he got his nickname from one of the other artists that worked at TSR when they started calling him Diesel. I'm really looking forward to sharing some of the art from his catalog. He's one of my favorite artists. Did some of my favorite images early on, those that I looked at a lot through the years. So if you stick around to the end, I'm going to do a countdown of my top 5 favorite illustrations from LaForce, which is hard to do because I really like a lot of his art. So, where does his art show up? He's in the Dungeon Master's Guide, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. He has some interior illustrations in the basic and expert rule books that came out, illustrations for some of the pantheons and deities and demigods. And although he didn't do any cover art for adventure modules, he does a number of illustrations that show up in a large number of the modules that are produced at this period in time. So the Dungeon Master's Guide. LaForce was actually working, as I understand it, in the mailroom at TSR when David Sutherland, who was the art director and one of the most prolific artists at the time, saw some of his drawings and suggested he submit some things for consideration, and they picked a couple in the Dungeon Master's Guide. And then he did a number of illustrations in the what we call the Mold Bay box set and the Cook box set, these basic expert rules that were put out in that time period. Here are a couple of his illustrations. He's got this one at the top right that's supposed to help you visualize what is role-playing. So you've got the young man and the young woman, and they're thinking about themselves and the characters they're going to create. And here's an illustration that I really thought about putting in my top 5 of his. This was in the basic book, and it's just such a great illustration. You've got a fighter, a thief behind him, an elf. You notice the elf here is as tall as the humans. A cleric, a dwarf, and a halfling. So these things really helped you visualize what those characters might be like, and I just love the art in this drawing a lot. He also did an illustration in the monster section of the Medusa, and I believe that's a carrion crawler at the top. And then a drawing here of a guy who's disappeared from his armor. I think he's a potion of gaseous form is what's happened to him. He did one drawing in the expert set, and that's the illustration of the giants, which appear there for the first time. And you've got the hill giant, stone giant, all the way up to the storm giant, the cloud giant. And so these are really, really great. And I thought, this type of illustration that gives you some understanding of relative size to each other and just some distinguishing characteristics about the giants was really cool. Then deities and demigods, he does a lot of work here, and we'll take a look at several of these pantheon illustrations he did. So he's got this one in the introduction, just sort of showing you, a little through the fourth wall there, a player holding his character, right? He did an illustration for the Native American, and another shot here for the Arthurian, and then several, and maybe all of the Babylonian deities. And there's some really cool, really funky ones that he did. I really like the guy with the 8 arms and the squid feet, and then this other guy with the extra set of eyes and ears who's breathing fire. I mean, I didn't know that much about Babylonian deities, but until I read this book. But I thought that their characters or illustrations really made them interesting characters. And then he's got an action shot down here at the bottom. And there's Gilgamesh, I believe, wrestling with an ox, and this other guy is casting a spell on, I think, Tiamat, probably, right? Because it's a 6-headed dragon. I did illustration for Central American, for the Central American myth, this hawk creature, and then Tousle Toll, who's the naked lady here walking out towards the water. Sorry, there we go. So he did this Chinese dragon with Jeff D. They both have artist credit there on that. And then he did a couple of illustrations for the, I'm sorry, he did one illustration for the Finnish deities and one for the Indian. And then he did a couple action shots here for the Japanese pantheon. I think they're both really cool. Again, another one I really like that I considered putting in my top 5 is this action shot down here. It looks like you've got like a ogre magi fighting, or at least that's what I've always thought this guy looks like, with the horns, and he's super big. And then if you have the old version of Deities and Demigods in the Melnibonian section, he did some scene illustrations. And then several of the non-human deities as well. You've got Hergic, the deity of the bugbears, who's probably my favorite of the group. But these are all, I think, some really good. Some of his some really good illustrations. Some of my favorite from this book. He did several for the Norse pantheon as well. And he also did some, I believe these are for the Sumerian pantheon. Really good art. And then some scenes for that as well. Now let's take a look at the illustrations he did in a number of the modules. This is from A1. He did 3 illustrations in that one, including the top one there, which is the interior cover art from that adventure. And he did one illustration in the famous B2 Keep on the Borderlands. This is the guy, I think, arriving at the keep, right? Sort of wondering how he's going to get in. Then these are pretty rare. You may not have seen these before. This is from the first version of C1, which was has a blue cover and was a convention tournament module first, before it becomes the brown mono cover and then the cover that was more popularly sold. So these are there. They're not in the later editions of that adventure. And then these are from the monochrome version of C1. And he also did some of the, and that one had a booklet of illustrations you could show the player characters, and so he did several illustrations for that as well. And then these are from C2. I think he's got this giant looking guy down here at the bottom and the pterodactyl up there at the top. Then he's got a couple of really great illustrations again, sort of in my honorable mention category. You got this lady who's here from D1, D2, and then you've got this deep gnome from D3. He has one illustration in the G123 adventure, and again, he seems to like to draw, or maybe gets asked to draw giants a lot. So here we've got a couple of fire giants, I believe. And then he does some illustrations that show up in Q1. The above and below pictures are from that adventure. And he got a couple adventures in X1, the Isle of Dread, that came in the adventure module that came in the expert set, box set. I really like these cat people down here at the bottom. I always thought they were really cool. So now let me show you, just for fun, my favorite of his drawings. I'm not an art critic. This is just what I like. But hopefully the point of this is just to get you to look at some old art and like it. So this is one of the 2 drawings that was in the Dungeon Master's Guide. I always thought it was very evocative. It's just, a skull with the sword stuck in the ground or in the sand. But I think this is just, for me, the flavor of what AD&D from the late 70s, early 80s was all about. This is from the Norse pantheon, and I just always loved this drawing because he's got this god of the fire giants, right, with his hair and beard and mustache are all flames in addition to his flaming sword. And I just thought that was a really clever illustration. This one, for me, is one totally, seared in my memory. This is from the Mold Bay Basic Rule Book. And what I think is so interesting about it, first off, I don't know what exactly creature he's got there. I don't think things a kobold or a nasty elf or what he is, because he's got sort of pointy elven ears. But anyway, so this is showing you, I think, chaos, neutrality, and lawfulness, right? The three alignments are illustrated here. And you've got the man in the back who represents being lawful, restraining him, the guy in the front who's chaotic and looking to put this guy down. And then you got the third guy, right? He's neutrality. Couldn't care less what they do. He's just waiting for them to move on. So really, I thought, good job of encapsulating what alignments are, which is kind of a difficult topic for folks to wrap their mind around. Here's a really famous one. This is from the deity demigods non-human or humanoid pantheon. And this is Samuanya, who is, I'm probably mispronouncing that, but he is the deity of the lizard men, and just a really famous drawing that Diesel did. And then my number one drawing of his catalog is this one from the Dungeon Master's Guide. He only got 2 in that book, but they were both fantastic. In some respects, like, nothing is more evocative about Dungeons and Dragons than this scene. You have the simplest of monsters, right? The skeleton. The guy's clearly, I always felt like probably is some type of trap. Either the water came in after he got in the room, or he fell in this room. He's trying to figure out how to get out of the door. This is early days, characters tend to die kind of scene. And just love it, with the water dripping off of the skeleton as it emerges, and this guy just scared out of his mind, desperate to get out. So that's it for my look at David S. LaForce, the man known as Diesel, or by his initials DSL, who's one of the most important illustrators in the early era of Dungeons and Dragons, from the late 70s to early 80s. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you enjoyed looking at his art. If you didn't know it, I'm glad to have helped you take a look at some of the great early art from my favorite era of Dungeons and Dragons. Hope you're enjoying this series. I've got a few more to do for sure, and hope you're a subscriber. And if you're not, please subscribe. Please tell your friends who like this kind of early era D&D stuff to take a look at the channel, and hopefully they can subscribe as well. Hope everybody had a good first half of December. Get ready for the holidays, and until next time, my friends, keep rolling 20s.